people are joining.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kept you guys waiting a little longer than usual, but welcome everybody. This is Art Viewing Adventures. I'm Rodney Paul, and I'm joined by my good friend and fellow guide, Jeanette Pettibone. Jeanette, how's your Monday going so far?
Not too bad. It's a pretty hectic day at work, but I always have some time to come and talk with you about art. And I hope everybody else is having a nice break in their day too this Monday. How about you, Rodney?
Oh, my day's good. I got my sixth COVID booster shot, so I'm ready for the bug.
Yeah.
And then Nikki, how are you doing, Nikki?
I'm fine, thank you. It's all overcast over here on the west side. I'm in the Ingleside, so covered by fog.
Covered by fog. It was a little bit of rain coming down.
Yeah.
We're just about to start, but I want to ask Jeanette real quick. Jeanette, you're doing tours at the Legion of Honor and the DeYoung. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so just started up full speed again to give tours. I'll be giving tours if anybody wants to come on one of my tours. Wait, let me get my calendar up to make sure that I've got the right dates. But of course, these are public tours that are free with admission to the museum. So once you get your admission ticket to the museum, they're free. And I'll be giving tours of Ansel Adams at the DeYoung coming up 1 p.m. on Friday, June 23rd, and then at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday, June 24th. And then again, Saturday, July 8th at 11 and 1 p.m. And then I'll be giving a permanent collection tour of the Legion of Honor. So the Legion of Honor has the European art collection. I'll be giving a tour of that at 12 p.m. on Saturday, August 26th. So anybody is welcome to come join me in person if you can make it. It would be nice to see some of you in person. If you do, come introduce yourself as someone who was at this art viewing adventure. And I'd love to meet you and talk to you if you can make it.
Yeah, and I don't want to embarrass you, Jeanette, but Jeanette is a fabulous tour guide. She's one of my favorite guides. If you get my weekly email, Jeanette, I'm going to go ahead and put your dates in my email so that folks know about it.
Yep.
And if you're not on that email list and you want to just put your email address into chat, I can add you, and you'll get and you just get an email every Friday. And if you ever got sick of it, you could easily unsubscribe. So we are at 1 o'clock. I think we should get started. Nikki, tell us about the community living campaign that hosts this program.
Hi, I say the same thing every week, every meeting, but if anybody's new here or doesn't really remember who we are, what we do, we're the SF Community Living Campaign, and we advocate for seniors and people with disabilities. We provide lots and lots of support when it comes to learning tech, because we want to make sure that that digital divide between seniors and disabled individuals and tech gets narrower and narrower, because even filling a parking meter now, you got to be a little bit tech savvy, right? We also provide programming like this for our creative minds to enjoy art, to do creative writing. We have exercise programs, lots of stuff that this organization brings to those communities. And Jennifer's our tech assistant. She's always so dependable and great doing that. So thank you, Jennifer. And you can get a calendar. You can look at our calendar online. I will put the link in the chat. So I want to get on with this program. It sounds very interesting. So thank you, Jeanette and Rodney.
Well, thank you, Nikki. We really appreciate being hosted by the Community Living Campaign. Also, Jennifer, our tech, we always really appreciate what you do. So we are going to be talking about Edward Hopper, very well-known American painter from kind of mostly early part of the 20th century. And usually we talk about subjects that relate to things going on in the Bay Area, but this this exhibition, Edward Hopper's New York, was at the Whitney in New York City. And unfortunately, it's not planned to come here to San Francisco, but we have a love of Edward Hopper. We just love, his paintings suggest often interesting narratives. So it's just a great thing to discuss. And I'm joined by my fellow guide, Jeanette Pettibone. So Jeanette, again, welcome. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeanette.
Yeah, so I have been giving tours of art and talks on art since about 2011. Here in the Bay Area, I am a volunteer docent at the Fine Arts Museums, though I don't represent them here. I'm an independent person in these calls, and I just absolutely love talking to people about art. I don't think that you need an art history background to enjoy, appreciate, and be able to look at art and love it. So I'm always very happy to join you, Rodney, in your art viewing adventures here.
Well, we're always really happy to have you, Jeanette. I know you've been on a couple times before. But this one really originated just because I saw this exhibition, loved it. And the only thing I regretted was I was there by myself. I didn't really have anyone to discuss what I was looking at with. So that's what Jeanette and I decided to do, was pick some of our favorite paintings from the catalog and talk about them. And we'll first show you a picture of Edward Hopper. He he had grown up in the New York area, and then he worked in New York for most of his career. And the paintings in this exhibition are all from New York, which was fabulous to be able to be in that city and then to see these images of it from, over some of them are over 100 years old, or, from a while ago. And yet, of course, that city, in many ways, parts of it haven't changed that much.
I love the fact that, so he painted scenes of New York for about 7 decades. So this is really his work. I see is very much sort of his love letter to the city where he lived for most of his life. And I think that's beautiful. And just to put some context, you were not, we don't usually talk too much about the painter himself and his life, but he was born in 1882. So just to kind of set the context, and, he lived in New York from about 1905 to 1967. So just to give you an understanding of where his art sits in history.
Yeah, and let's just jump in and start looking at some images. We wanted to start with Nighthawks, which is not in that exhibition, by the way, but it is his most famous work, and probably everybody in the audience has seen it before. What are we to make of this, Jeanette?
Well, I would be interested in knowing if you guys can figure out how to do the reactions in this. How many of you do know this painting?
Yeah, that's great. Let's do that. So
if you can figure out at the bottom of Zoom, there's a reactions. If you can do a thumbs up or something.
Or you could turn on your camera and just hold up. I'm seeing lots of thumbs ups out there.
Lots of thumbs up. Good.
We might have asked, is anybody not familiar with
that? Yeah. So, but I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed if they haven't. I feel like there's a certain set of paintings in the world that them so well, even if you haven't ever seen them in person. And this is just, to me, feels like one of those that I saw even before I started looking at it. And of course, I think it's pretty indicative of the best of Edward Hopper's work, that this mood that he evokes, not just the image itself. So Rodney, why don't you tell me about how you feel about this painting?
Well, I always wonder, we're looking at these 4 figures, which one of them do we identify with? And I'll just say for myself, I identify with the guy that's just kind of sitting here And it kind of reminds me, I went to the Taddage Grill last week, and unfortunately, the Taddage Grill is not getting a ton of people right now. And by the way, folks, if you get a chance, support the Taddage Grill. That's the oldest restaurant in California. Fabulous, classic place, which probably looked the same as it did in 1930 or 1942. As this is from 1942. But I was sitting by myself, and just thinking, like, who is this guy? What's he making of his surroundings? There's a sort of sense for me of loneliness in this. He sees this couple over here, and is he going to have a conversation with them? What do you think? What do you think of that guy, Jeanette? Where are you going when you see this painting?
Yeah, I agree. If I was someone in this painting, I think I would also be that person sitting alone at this bar. I just reminds me of so many times when I've gone in, especially when it's late at night or early in the morning and you're by yourself and just getting a cup of coffee or something like that. I definitely relate to the solo. One of the things I think we see already in some chats, some comments from the audience, and the isolation, definitely. I thank you for that comment, and go ahead and put more comments in, folks. But I also, it feels so interesting to me, the angles that we have here. There's this pretty acute sort of wedge angle around this corner. It's not just a square corner, it's almost an acute angle that makes it a triangle, which is mirrored inside on the bar. It's sort of this triangular shaped bar. And I often wonder, how did these people enter? Where's the entrance here? Where's the entrance behind the counter for the man that's working? Where's the entrance? It must be far off to our right. There must be a door that we can enter, but by not including the door, it feels even more isolating for the figures inside, in my opinion, that we're watching them and there's no clear way for how we might go inside and join them. So they're definitely behind this glass, behind a window for us to look at from outside. And that makes me feel isolated in another way too, is that I can't join them. I'm not sure how to join them, even if I wanted to, so that I'm the viewer out on the street all by myself without any other signs of life.
Yeah, Gail says, the big picture windows let me look into an intimate moment inside the diner. And Jeanette, when you and I were talking about this, you said it was almost like an aquarium, right?
Yeah.
Looking at these figures. Sarah says, it's almost like a terrarium, and they are not meant to come out. So they're stuck in there, right? They've been in this painting now for 81 years.
Yeah.
Pauline says, I also wonder about the partially illuminated storefront behind them to the left. What is it during the day? So let's see. Partially illuminated storefront. We're talking about this right here. And by the way, I just got to say, like, just technically, the way he renders these windows and the way we're seeing other windows through the windows is just exquisite. This is it reminds me of Rene Magritte, who was really great at doing windows too. Yeah, Peter and Kevin, it's like a fishbowl. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rick says, the limited palette and color selection really appeals to me.
Yeah.
Hold that thought, Rick, because we're going to show you something else that relates to this in just a moment with a similar palette.
One thing that I like, and we also are going to talk about this in a moment, is, going back to that partially illuminated storefront. I think we'll see something very similar soon, but I like that even though there aren't people outside of this fishbowl in Phillies, that we still have the suggestion of city life and lots of people. And that's the suggestion of this storefront. It's closed now, but I can imagine it's going to be busy. And the suggestion above that of all of these windows, that there are people that live behind those or work behind those. And there's still suggestion of a lot of life while being very empty and isolated, having both all of that together, sort of this juxtaposition of emptiness and yet we know that there's something more.
Yeah, and a lot of people were talking about Hopper paintings during the pandemic because, you know, we're like looking through windows and we know people are in there, but we don't see them. And, you know, the sense of isolation. So, and we're going to look at more of his paintings and we'll see more of that theme. Gail says, I identify with the server who is chatting with the couple and probably finding out some interesting information. I myself love chatting like that.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I had a great chat with my server at the Tatted's Grill. So, and then there's some themes that we're seeing in this painting that we're going to see in a whole bunch of the others. So Jeanette, tell me about some of the things we should be paying attention to here.
Well, of course, some of the things that we talked about yesterday, Rodney, were not only the chairs, but the empty chairs, which gives a sort of the sense of, again, isolation, loneliness, maybe. We talked about windows, looking through windows, and really important, what side of the window are we on as the viewer? Are we inside or are we outside? And who is inside or outside? These are a few of the things that we talked about. Rodney?
Oh, I want to add one more, which is
Yep.
hats. Lots of people are wearing hats.
Yep.
And we at Art Viewing Adventures particularly like paintings with people wearing hats. That's we got a thing for that, you know. So why don't we dive in and see some of these other lesser known Edward Hopper paintings? And we were talking about the palette of Nighthawks with this kind of wonderful reddish color in the greens. And then this is a painting from 12 years before. And you and I, Jeanette, we were starting to think maybe this is the same place, you know,
Yeah.
maybe this row here.
I was looking at those empty benches or wooden displays right in the front, and then the color there and the color of the windows above. And then when we looked at this next painting, Early Sunday Morning, we were kind of thinking how perfect that after Nighthawks, early the next morning, we get it looks like almost the same building with a few different changes here, of course, but that this might have been early the next morning after the cafe is, or the for Phillies is empty. And we still have, however, no people on the street. Yet still the suggestion, I think, of people in those windows. We have various, the shutters up and down, or the curtains drawn or not, the sort of shutters up and down. There are all these storefronts that look like as soon as it's a little later in Sunday morning, we're going to see a bunch of activity. So there's a sense of anticipation almost for me in this one, that I get the sense of a big city, but that quiet moment before the rush starts.
Yeah, I'm wondering if our friend from the other painting, is he sleeping in? You know, the guy who's by himself, you know, is he sleeping in one of these apartments? And who lives back there? What are their lives like? What happened Saturday night? You know?
Yeah.
So,
oh, and I love this. Yeah. There's a comment about loving the shadows. Look at the shadows, the shadow of the barber pole, the shadow of the fire hydrant. Look at that really, really deep blue shadow. That's just gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, do we think Wayne Thiebaud might have been a fan
Yeah.
of Edward Hopper? I really have to believe he would have been.
Yeah, this is the first time I've thought about that. Yeah, great point. I think so. Absolutely.
And it's the same palette. It's really the
Yeah.
same palette as the other painting, even though it's 12 years earlier.
And Rix is saying the barber pole seems to be the initial focal point, and then my eye wanders to all the other subtle, interesting items. And I think this is exactly true, is you may have a focal point, but there's so much else to look at. And I think Hopper gives you the space to look at it, to look at everything. And so that's really beautiful.
Yeah, for us, we're looking at this saying, oh, this is an urban scene, but it's important to remember, 1930, this is a time when cities are really coming to the forefront. Like a majority of the American population is now living in cities, and many people in the city are going to be new to the city. They will have moved from more rural settings. And so Hopper is really showing us a place that it would probably look very different to people back in his time than it does to us today.
Yeah, good point.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
So another window, another shop window that we've seen. But this one's a little different. So tell us, like, what jumps out at you, Jeanette?
Well, we have the same corner. It's not quite the cute angle of the Nighthawks, but we have a same corner, and we're outside on an almost empty or totally empty street looking in. But what we're looking at is very different. It's not a story that, with Nighthawks, there's some story there. We don't really know what it is. We don't know who the guy at the counter is, or the couple at the counter, or any of this. But here I feel like we do know what the story is. This is very clearly a drugstore display. And so we're looking at it as it's meant to be looked at, which is very different in my mind than Nighthawks, where there's kind of a sense of voyeurism if we're looking out at them in the thing where we're looking at people. But here we're supposed to be looking, which is a slightly different feel. What about you, Rodney? What do you think?
While it's such a time capsule, so this would be how pharmacies would have looked back in the 1920s. These things that are kind of framing the window, these things hanging down, are big, kind of big glass containers with like it would be a red liquid and a green liquid, which would be suggesting to us the various drugs or various chemicals that are used to make drugs in the pharmacy, which today we wouldn't think about so much. We don't think of the pharmacy as a place where they make drugs. We think of it as a place where they just sell drugs.
Right.
But back at this time, it's kind of like a magical time for medicine, because many of these drugs are new. They're really important. And there's a kind of magical element to this, right? Like it's almost like they're wizards in there.
Yeah.
I mean, X-Lax, we all know about X-Lax, and something we just take for granted. And maybe, I think when I was a kid, I used to think that was really funny that people needed a drug like that. No, it's just funny. But, for them, these things were really, really important.
Yep.
I like that. I think we should take note that it's at night, and we again have shadows. He does like night scenes. Jeanette, you and I we were talking about this, kind of made the connection to film noir.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All the night scenes, and I think also there's some style that's involved here. The darkness, the emptiness, and then a few focal points that really does connect me to film noir. A lot of this is before film noir, right?
It's before. Yeah, we make that connection, but film noir hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. There's some good comments in the chat. Gail says she loves the geometric shapes on the sidewalk, and they're gorgeous. And I love how almost the triangular shapes of the banners in the window, the red and blue banners, kind of are mirrored by these geometric shapes on the triangular geometric shapes on the sidewalk. Yeah, great observation. Marcia says the illumination lends to the magical. Yes, absolutely. As we were just talking about, that night, the fact that this is at night, it really brings that all the illumination coming from inside the store. It's really amazing. And then Gail, X-Lax, ew. Yep. He must have added it to the signage for some reason. Was it the new hot offering? That's really interesting. I'm not sure if he was mirroring or he included X-Lax as a direct reference to a particular pharmacy, or if he made the decision to add X-Lax and for reasons that Rodney was talking about the like start of drugstores like this.
I'll add something to that though, which is that I'll bet there was a reaction to this. There was some negative reaction in his time. Like, okay, how come you had to show us this? Like paintings, should paintings really be showing us advertisements for laxatives? Is that something we really want to think about in the art gallery? And of course, as an artist, Edward Hopper would be saying, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's some humor in this. And he's like, yeah, you think of these things as, this isn't something we should be talking about. This is something that happens behind closed doors. And the artist wants to say, no, it's like, we want to shine a spotlight on everything.
I like that.
I like Ron's comment. The flasks filled with colored water reminds him of Main Street in Disneyland. Perhaps maybe they were inspired by this painting. I think that's right. I think you'll see echoes of Hopper all over our world, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing how influential he is, not just in painting, but just an aesthetic that is really can be recognizable once you are familiar with his work.
Yeah. Sherry says, if it was really there, X-Lax may have paid them to put the sign in the window. We see that a lot now. I mean, we see, this is the thing, if we aren't squeamish about laxatives, because you can go on TV and see all kinds of other advertisements for all kinds of things that some people think go beyond the bounds of good taste. Gail says the dates on the signage are obscured. Interesting. Normally you'd think this would be important info. The date, I'm not sure, that might be the street address. I'm not sure if those are dates or not.
But the numbers are obscured.
Yeah. And then Sarah says X-Lax was introduced in 1906 and the name was short for excellent laxative. There you go.
Things you didn't expect to learn in an art show.
No extra charge, folks.
No, that's great. I'm so glad thanks for looking that up, Sarah.
Yeah. I'm going to continue. Let's go to this next one. Another night scene, another window, another empty chair. But like Jeanette, you really wanted to talk about this one.
Yeah, I love this one. This is one of we're not going to see too many where we are on the inside. We're on the other side of the window. We're not looking at her, or at least there's no indication that we're looking through a window. It seems like we're too close to her, that we are actually inside with her and not looking at her through a window like we were with Nighthawks, or even the drugstore last time, where we're looking through a window to the subject. I think this is just such a beautiful painting. It's called Automat, and if you're like me, who didn't grow up with automats, they were basically self-service restaurants. So there's and I'm guessing they were quite popular at this time in the 20s in New York City, especially. So she's sitting there with a coffee, and things I love Okay, so I love her. I think that she's just painted so beautifully, sitting there like one glove on, one glove off. It gives this sense of she's maybe in a hurry. She's just having a quick coffee, just enough to take one glove off. I'm not quite sure about that. I love the roundness of her hat and how it's, yeah, and there's this like curving and how that shape is echoed in that bowl right next to her, whether that's flowers or fruit or whatever's in that bowl, but that echoing of that rounded shape. And then, she even has sort of a rounded face. I like that in the window, because we do still have a window in here. It's behind us. We have this like almost darker halo around her. So a dark halo instead of a light halo. And then in it, you can kind of see that there is life outside. But it's really obscure. We're not meant to look through the window, really. What we do get, though, is the reflection of the lights inside the automat that we see in the window, and the diagonals that they come all so that they're pointing right to the top of her. So everything is directing our eye towards her. Like there was a comment earlier about the barber pole, and then you look around. It feels like in this one, you're looking and everything, every clue is sort of drawing you to her, to looking at her. And of course, right across from her is this empty chair. She's alone and isolated. There aren't even waiters or waitresses, or that she is quite alone in this moment, and I think it's lovely.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
in that time, all these people are coming to the city, and for young women, I think until this point, a woman was just, you really were expected to be raising a family. Maybe you're working on a farm, maybe you're working in a store in your town. But these women come to the city, and it's not the easiest life for them. And I don't know what Edward Hopper's view was, but I feel like this is a very sympathetic portrait of this woman. It just makes me think about her looking into her coffee cup. What's going on with her? Is she lonely? Is she hoping to maybe make friends, meet someone to get involved with? Who is she, and what's going on in her life? And she's in this automat, which like you don't even have a waiter. You're on your own. You're just getting your food and eating it. So again, we see, like we talked about that with Nighthawks, that there's a sense of isolation, and that's really, really very acute in this one too.
It was it was an interesting time for women. Hi, this is Nikki. This is an interesting time for women. I happened to read a really interesting book about the Barbizon Hotel in New York City in the early 1900s. And it was all about the emergence of young women leaving home, single, and seeking professional jobs, that were limited, but they were seeking those positions and their independence. And I believe it started in the 1920s. The novel, I think it's a semi-fiction book that I read about the Barbizon, and it was so interesting. And it still existed all the way until I think the 1970s. And I really enjoyed that book. This reminds me of that time.
So,
Can you put the name of the book in the chat?
Yeah,
for anyone who,
I know
The book is by Fiona Davis.
okay.
Okay.
thanks for that, Doris.
Yeah. And
I mean, we've been talking about how, actually, we haven't really mentioned this, that a lot of these paintings evoke a narrative. They evoke, we can all tell ourselves stories. It doesn't tell us too much. We might go in our own different directions with these stories, but they could easily be illustrations of, say, a short story in the New Yorker about a young woman in New York City. Maybe John Cheever, something by Cheever might evoke that. And, you really do, like, he really makes us want to know more about these people he's showing us.
So some great comments we have. We have automat, what an automat is. You had food in slots on a wall and you put your nickels or coins in to get, you know, like substantial food or coffee out. One glove on may be that she's cold, says Sherry, who also gave us lots of automat information. Gail says bare legs and revealing neckline make me wonder if she's a woman of the night, yet the hat and coat say respectable. And so, and Sherry agrees. And then Gail goes on to say, so many rounded shapes indicate softness and safety. Yeah, I think you guys are spot on. There is all this bare skin, but I feel, yeah, I feel like all of the roundness, at least I feel that there's something very soft and sort of innocent about her, even though I don't know why. Maybe it's all the rounded shapes and the like softness of her collar, of her coat. And but yeah, I do get this feeling. However, here she is alone at night in this automat. Rick says background is darkest around her, which frames her and really pulls you to look directly at her. Absolutely. And then there's the Fiona Davis book on the Barbizon Hotel. And then Lee Ellen Shoemaker says there's a phantom shape in the reflection behind her to the right.
To her right. And I'm wondering if she's meaning this one's this little blue thing is very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
What is
yeah,
that?
I don't know what that
inside?
is.
Is that outside?
Yeah. It's really, like I mentioned, it's remarkable that we're not supposed to be looking through the window. The window is a background, which is almost unheard of in in Hopper. So as you go through the rest of the presentation, look at the rest of the Hopper paintings, and I feel like you're always looking through a window at some, and so this is quite unusual. But yeah, what those figures are, it's really unclear.
Yeah. Gail says the reflection in the window on the left looks like a cathedral to me.
Oh,
It's very unclear what it is out there.
yeah.
So our imagination can take us to different places.
I love
kind of
that.
thought, made me think about fog. Maybe that I'm being influenced by our region and the weather we seem to be having these days.
I love that. I love everybody. I love all of your comments. This is absolutely great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's like this is 96 years old, this painting, and yet it still speaks to us.
Yeah, it feels really modern. So, yep.
Let's move on to another. This is one you and I both loved, Jeanette. So tell me, what drew you to this painting?
Well, in this one, I feel like now we're maybe on the outside looking in of an eating establishment, and things that I really love about this painting. This display of fruit at the front, all of these, I don't know, are they grapefruits or oranges or melons? Or I love this display of fruit and the fruit basket. I love how she's sort of the woman right there in the white that works at the restaurant. She's sort of bending over, and there's something very inviting about her posture, inviting you in. And also maybe like the last one, we questioned what the woman, her relationship to the night, maybe we'll say, but like there's something not sexual, but sensual, I find, about a lot of these women in eating establishments here, also something just beautiful about this. And I know, Rodney, you have sort of a personal connection feeling towards this and the restaurant you've mentioned, right?
Yeah, I'm going to pitch for the Tadich again, just because I love the Tadich, and I'm concerned because when I went in there, it was not crowded, but this is very much the same. How many of you are fans of the Tadich? Because this is pretty much the same It could be the Tadich. It's not, it's supposed to be in New York City, but they have the same kind of style with this woodwork. I even think they have lamps. The lamps in the Tadich are like that lamp. And the only thing that tells you this is definitely not the Tadich is that there's a woman behind the cash register and there's this woman server. And it seems like the Tadich there are women who work in the Tadich, but usually it's like pretty old men. I used to always think they were a little bit severe, but when I went in there, they're very friendly now. So it's a classic place. This is a classic place that we're being shown by Hopper, and the Tadich is that too. It's been around since I think like 1850, and it hasn't changed much over the years. It's pretty much the way it's always been. It has these, like behind this would be booths at the Tadich, but it also has a bar with bar stools you can sit on.
Yeah. I
So-
love the colors in this. This is a little bit brighter than a lot of the other paintings we've looked at, with so much yellow. With the yellow fruit and the yellow walls and the yellow plant holders and the yellow frames of the, I assume the menu up in the front, and the yellow of her hair. There, it really creates this sort of bright, really inviting atmosphere that I think is beautiful. Yeah.
It's a marvelous palette. I am not sure what this is, but it looks like a glass. We're looking through more glass. So again, I think Hopper was really good at rendering glass. So he always wanted to be doing that. Do you think, are these mirrors or are they windows? What do you think, Jeanette?
Oh, I was thinking they're mirrors, and you can sort of see the shadows of the man and the woman, but very abstractly, that's just like a little bit of darkness on sort of the right side of the man and the right side of the woman, but not mirrors. I imagine them being very old-fashioned mirrors, the kind that aren't clear, but give more of a shadowy feel. I don't know if that's right or not.
Oh, Marcia's got her hand raised. Go ahead, Marcia.
Oh.
I think
I'm
it's more
sorry,
like
that must be from a long time
frosted
ago.
glass.
Sorry.
I think it's more like a frosted glass. And I think this also reminds me of Sam's down in the financial district,
Oh.
but also had the booze and all that same flavor. It was very popular.
Yeah, Sam's and the Tadich I think they were competitors, and they're same style of restaurant. I don't know, Sam's still operating?
As far as I know, it's still alive and well.
Good, we got to support these places. Some interesting discussions in chat about apparently women at one point weren't allowed into the Tadich. And then Doris says they were allowed starting in the 70s. So, I mean, I'm glad that they were allowed in the 70s and sorry that they weren't allowed earlier.
No, in the 70s where they weren't allowed.
Oh, in the 70s, they weren't allowed. Okay, well, I have nothing positive to say about that policy. And then I think Gail was noting that the hooks on the wall would be, they have those same hooks at the Tadich. Maybe this was just a style that was popular back then. Rob says this is a rather happy, upbeat scene for Hopper. That's a good point. What's up, Jeanette? Tell me, do you get that sense that this is much more cheery than some of these other paintings we've been looking at?
Yeah, I think it's exactly because of the color palette. This is a much brighter, and it feels like we're in the daytime. I don't know if that's right or if it's just that this place is very well lit. But if you look at the woman in the front, her forehead is very lit up, and that makes me feel like the light source is coming from outside into place, that this is the daytime, that this is a lunch, that and I don't know, do other people have that same feeling that this is cheery or cheerier than the normal Hopper?
Yeah, I see, like Jane says, all the figures are animated, seem happy. Oh, look at the clock for the time of day.
Oh.
We
that-
get just a little bit of the clock. It looks
Yeah.
like it's coming up maybe on noon. Is that what you're seeing? Or is
Well,
that,
it's
or is
hard
that
to
coming
see.
up on 8?
Yeah, it's hard to see which one's the big hand. Like, it's either like 20 to noon
5
or
minutes to 8, Karen
5
said.
to 8. Yeah.
And then Gail says, maybe he ran out of dark colors. He gravitates to, forgot to get more, but felt like painting. So he had to do a daytime scene and use bright colors.
Yeah, I
mean,
love that.
so it's interesting to compare this couple here with the couple in Nighthawks.
Yeah. Yeah, they're interacting with one another. It looks like they're having a conversation. They're sitting across from each other and not next to each other, which of course, sitting at a table versus sitting at the bar lends itself to that. But we often see people even sitting across the table from each other not interacting. And I feel very much like that they are interacting, the way his hand is up and he's looking right at her. Yeah, it feels like something a little more animated.
Jennifer says she thought these might be glass cabinets, which could be possible. Really, Paul Ann says the title of the painting is Table for Ladies, but the only lady at a table is with a man.
Yeah.
That's a great point. One of my favorite Hoppers is one with 2 women eating at a booth in a restaurant, a big chop suey sign outside the window. So yeah, it's, he's showing us really urban life.
Yeah, we didn't include that painting. I think is called Chop Suey. We didn't include it in our presentation today, but it's a lovely painting. Thanks for bringing that up, Pauline.
There's so many we could have chosen. I think the catalog, if anyone wants to see the catalog, you and I, Jeanette, both borrowed it from local libraries.
Right.
So check, I think San Francisco Public Library has it.
Definitely has a number of copies, yeah.
Just go look up Ed Hopper's New York and put it on hold. And you might have to wait a little bit, but you will get a chance to have it for 3 weeks.
Yep.
So I recommend doing that.
There's also a lot of essays if you want to dive into what the experts say.
Yeah, and you and I, we try not to really delve too much into like what the art orthodoxy has to say about these things. And we just kind of come up with our own, I think you guys can tell, we just talk about what our own reactions are, bring our own experience.
And I think that you, like I mentioned, you don't need an art history degree to know how to look and appreciate art. And I think it's fun to come up with your own, very much our style is, we mirror what we would do if the two of us just went to an exhibit for the first time and we're standing next to each other at the front of a painting and just started talking about what we thought about it. And I really like that.
Yeah, we're not really, we don't get together and say, oh, I don't know, what ism is this one from? Is it from the urban realism?
Yeah.
Well, last comment before we move on, Gail says, the couple are talking to each other, so we know the painting was done before cell phones. I think the great point is that these things are all wonderful time capsules.
Yeah.
And just a great way of looking back on life in a different era and comparing it to our own, which is exactly what Gail did with that comment. Let's move on because we still have more great things to see. So Jeanette, you want to set this one up?
I'd like you to, since this was your choice, and why don't you get started with this?
So this, what's really important to know about this one is this is a scene from his studio. So Hopper's studio was on Washington Square Park in southern part of Manhattan, where New York University is. And it's interesting because that park today has lots and lots of trees, but we won't see a lot of trees in it. And it's surrounded by all these buildings. And so lots of people live around the park. Really, like, this looks like it could be almost in Paris or something, but we know it's not. Like, buildings don't look like this in Paris with this brickwork. And he's got a bunch of Washington Square paintings. We'll be showing you a couple more. But Jeanette, what are your thoughts on this?
So I really like how he's able to show both the busyness of a city and the emptiness of the city. Yeah, today there are lots of trees in that park, but the fact that at this moment there aren't trees there, that there creates this sense of emptiness on the left side of the painting. It's that gap between all of the tall buildings. It's kind of flat. There are people there, but it looks like each person is spaced out. Nobody is there together, that there are these individuals walking around. And we get the sense of scale too, that the people are so small from this angle, that the buildings seem so high, that you get both the sense of the busyness of the big city. That's why there are so many stories. That's why there are so many buildings and they're so tall, is because there are so many people. But then the contrast of this emptiness that you can find, the isolation, that you can be anonymous in a big city while being completely surrounded by people. And so I love that the mood is still here. And in this case, we're looking out of a window. So out from the window of his studio.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll look at a couple more of these Washington Square Park paintings. So here's another very different
Very different, yeah.
Washington Square Park. This is the church that is kind of around the corner from New York University, and you can see kind of, I think the park ended up getting changed. It doesn't really have this same configuration anymore. And it for you and me, Jeanette, it sparked an interesting discussion about Washington Square Park, how there were plans for it during Hopper's lifetime while he's working there. We'll see another, actually, we'll stick with that. That there was a plan, Robert Moses wanted to put like a highway through the middle of Washington Square.
Yeah.
Which is just
Yeah. It started in the 40s, and then in the late 40s, early 50s, I think he had developed a plan to put a highway right through the middle of Washington Square Park. And there would be an over walkway for people to get from one side of the park to the other. And Jane Jacobs, you may have heard of her. She is one of the luminaries of urban planning, fought Robert Moses, and has a group of women were protesting, and really this idea that the park spaces, the community spaces within a city, were vital for people's lives and for cities. And so the idea of big city urban renewal, including these freeways and further isolating people from one side to the other, she fought for communities. And I wonder what Hopper might have been thinking as he's painting pictures. These paintings of Washington Square Park are before that whole debate, but what he was thinking as he was living in the neighborhood and thinking about how important Washington Square Park was for him, what his side might have been, and how that relates to his paintings, and the fact that so much of his painting is sort of this isolation and not necessarily showing the way that communities come together. So we had a great discussion. If you're interested, I read this book, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. I think it was The Death and Life of the Great American City, or The Great City, something like that, by Jane Jacobs. It's fascinating if you're interested in cities.
I think I want to read that. And what a great heroic person she is.
Yeah.
Now it's funny. I'm going to skip to a couple. So we were talking about transportation, and he does have some paintings that evoke transportation to and from the city. So this is the Manhattan Bridge Loop. Fun for me because I actually biked over this bridge when I was in New York in January. And then this one, approaching a city. What an interesting view of the train lines that are bringing people in and out of New York City. So Jeanette, I know you really like this painting. What did you like about this?
Well, I love trains. I love public transportation. I personally don't own a car, so I'm always on public transportation, but I love, again, the fact that this is it feels so isolated, but at the same time, about the busyness. You see above, you see all the windows of all the people that are living there. You see these big train lines, and this is because people are going in and out, that this is a bustling center. But he captures it at this moment of quiet, of solitude, of maybe loneliness or isolation, that you get those two things together that I think I've mentioned that I don't know how many times, that I love that you capture both pieces together, the quiet and anonymous part of the city, and the isolation, as well as all of the structure and infrastructure, and that shows the busyness that is caused by the busyness.
Yeah, we don't see the people, and yet this is a scene that suggests to us this is a place
Right.
with a great number of people. I'm wondering, we saw that other one Sunday morning, and this maybe he painted this one Sunday morning also.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then let's keep going. Another train painting.
Yes.
This, boy, have you ever been on a train that was like this? If only Bart could, if we had like comfy swivel chairs on Bart, I think the experience would be so much different,
Yeah. I love this one, that there's the woman on the left is looking behind and looking at the woman who's reading a book, I'm guessing. And I love that there's just that little bit of looking, because what we haven't seen, in a lot of these, we're the ones looking. We, the viewer of the painting, are the ones looking inside, looking at the people in the paintings. Maybe they're interacting with each other, maybe they're not, but if they're interacting, it's because they know each other. But here we have what looks like a stranger actually looking at this woman, just like we are looking at this woman. And I like that little bit that we don't always get in a Hopper painting.
I want to go back to the last painting because I like Gail's comment a lot. Gail says, so cool, the tunnel is like a maw ready to swallow you up.
Yeah.
Let's move. I want to move to one more because we're kind of almost at the end of our time. But this was one. This is one I went to. I don't know if we did it on this program, but a discussion of kind of portraits of loneliness, alienation, and so this one kind of came up in that context. But this is just such an interesting painting of another couple, like we'd seen in these other two paintings, but they're interacting in a very different way. Room in New York, and also kind of interesting, like, where are we? Look how it's framed. But Jeanette, what was it about this painting that really struck you?
Oh, there's so much. First of all, I've talked about windows a lot, so it's important to note that we're outside looking into this scene, that we're outsiders, very much like with Nighthawks at the beginning. We're outside looking in. And then we're also look at how the window is cut in this painting. It's like chopped off to the side. We get a bunch of the structure of the building on the left, but we don't have the end of the window on the right. So that gives it a really interesting sort of photographic look, like a spontaneous look. Like maybe we're zooming by and we look in and see this. Are we, is this open onto the sidewalk? It feels like it must be a little high up. Where are we that we're peering into the scene? So that's like my first reaction kind of as a viewer is like, where am I and what am I looking at?
Yeah,
And
and we, 1932, it probably wasn't done with a drone.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that. But could it be like this is way up on high up in a building, and he's just chosen to give us this view of looking in a window,
Yeah.
bringing to mind, say, the movie Rear Window, the great Hitchcock film.
Oh, absolutely. And of course we go back to like film noir. It's also, you know, we keep getting dropped in the middle of a story. You know, we're not at the beginning of a story. We're not at the end of a story. We're somewhere in the middle. And I mentioned to you, it feels like someone could take Hopper's paintings and create an anthology of short stories, trying to come up with their own ideas about where was the beginning and what is the end of the scene that we're in. Some things I noticed that a little bit contradicts, maybe there's definitely this separation between these two people. They're not looking at each other. They're not focusing on each other. But I also like the fact her legs are pointing towards him. It's like she was sitting facing him and then just twisted away. So she hasn't always been, her back isn't to him. She hasn't always been ignoring him on the piano because of this real twist in her body. And he's, of course, focused on the newspaper, but he's leaning forward in a way that, you know, maybe he was a little closer to her than if he was leaning back. They're still in the same room. They're in the same room. They haven't turned their backs on each other. They haven't abandoned each other, but they're just doing their own thing for a little bit right now. And I don't know if this is a temporary thing or if this is, you know, the ability to do your own thing in a content marriage, or if this is the sign of things to come where they're even isolated as they are together.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, there's some great comments in the chat. I want to read.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to
Gail
hear
mentions the woman is competing with the door, a painting on the wall, the lampshade in the painting, truncated on the right. She's an afterthought, like maybe she is to the man in the painting.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. His interest in estrangement increased over the years, says Sharon. So this is fairly early, 1932 is not too kind of in the middle of his career. Ron says the woman is playing the piano with one finger, so she's killing time, not trying to seriously play the piano. She may be wanting to tell him something, but he's not paying attention. And then Karen wants to know, how tall is the door?
That is a very tall door.
Yeah, it's like, is Wilt Chamberlain going to walk into the door?
I mean, a more generous reading of this might be that he's actually reading out loud to her something interesting that he is reading in the newspaper, or maybe, you know, they're both dressed pretty nicely. You know, maybe they're about to go out and he's looking at the times for the theater, or, you know, and she's just, you know, like listening to him, but just, you know, playing a few notes on the piano in the meantime. But it is interesting that I think, as many of you noticed, it does feel like there's a type of estrangement, at least in this moment.
Isn't it interesting that we don't see their faces?
Yeah.
So we project these thoughts because we don't see emotion on their faces. It's just implied by how they're positioned, which
Yeah.
is something I think we see again and again in these Hopper paintings. So I think we are kind of at our time. We should wrap this up. Jeanette, it's always so much fun to talk
Yeah.
to you about these things. And I'm glad we did this, even though we don't have an exhibition to send you all to, we do have an excellent catalog to recommend. And let's just if you get the ear of any curators, tell them we would love to see an Edward Hopper exhibition in San Francisco. Definitely one of our beloved American painters.
Yeah.
And I've seen some more great comments in the chat. He just told her that their last stock has gone. I thought it was stock tables too, has gone down. They have to move from their attic apartment and sell the piano.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, sad story. The catalog is $75. It's true. That's why we're telling you, get it from the library. If you love Edward Hopper, you could do a lot worse for yourself than buying that catalog. I will say that. I think you could get it from whoever sells you your books. Jeanette, thanks again. And
Yeah, thank you.
If you missed it at the beginning of the show, Jeanette is a guide actually a docent, I should say, for the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, and she will have upcoming tours of both the permanent collection at the Legion of Honor and the Ansel Adams exhibition at the De Young. She's a fabulous guide. I highly recommend coming on her tours. And if you're not already getting my weekly email and you want to get it, just put your email address into chat. You can chat just to me if you want to keep it private, and I will add you to my weekly email that tells you about my events and the events of friends such as Jeanette. I'd love to get more of you guys on her in-person tours.
Yeah, I'd love to see people in real life. So
thanks everybody, and thanks Community Living Campaign for hosting us. As always, we really appreciate that.